Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our watch club for the Disney Plus series Obi-Wan Kenobi. The time of the Jedi is over. Hello, I'm JLAW, but you can call me Justin, and yes, today I'll be hosting our watch club for Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 1, entitled Part 1. If you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and Star Wars in general. So if you haven't watched the first episode, which is live now on Disney Plus, well, be sure to do so and come right back in less than 12 parsecs. Now, before we say hello there, let me introduce you to my traveler from the Outer Rim who's joining me today. She is a Jedi Master who masterfully uses a pencil to create beautiful artwork. We have friend of the show, Megan Clara of Megan Clara Draws. How are you?
Oh, that's so kind. Oh my God, to be referred to as a Jedi Master. I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, yes, as many who have followed our other watch clubs will know, Nate is usually the one that hosts these. And
yes.
we usually have 3 or 4 different people here. Everyone's very busy. Kev is currently in the process of moving houses. And if you're following us on social, Nate and Darcy are off in California right now, and they're enjoying all the sights and sounds of Star Wars Celebration. So Nate has left it up to me to host and kick off the first 2 episodes, which, spoiler alert, we are going to be recording both of them back to back, but they will be issued as separate episodes. But because it's the 2 of us, we'll probably move through these a little bit more quickly. I've surmised as much of the points throughout the episode. Not as well as Nate has, but as well as I can. And hopefully this will do the job and do the trick. And yeah, I'm excited for when Nate comes back, because this is quite the task. This, he always says to me, he's always like, you have all your video and editing stuff down to a science, and doing this and putting this watch club together, he definitely has it down to a science. So, yeah.
You're doing the best a Jawa can do, so.
Exactly. There you go. I love it. Awesome. Well, let's just get right into it, Meg. So the episode kicks off with a lovely recap of the prequel trilogy, focusing on Obi-Wan's journey through those stories along with Anakin. After this beautiful recap, it actually takes us into I guess what's the beginning or what's happening of Order 66 as it's taking place, and a young band of, I'm going to call them teenlings, because they look more like teenagers, escaping the clutches of those clones. So before we go any further, I'd love to get your thoughts on this fantastic recap that played before, and the moments that we see of Order 66. Do we think that this is going to have a more purposeful meaning as we go through the rest of this series?
Well, I am a big Obi-Wan fan, so super stoked for this show to be coming out, and then to see all of that recap of like him with Qui-Gon and the passing of the torch and the responsibility to train Anakin, and then seeing his brother like fall to pieces. It's just so cool. Obviously love that they stuck in those famous, not great written lines.
For sure.
You're my brother, Anakin, and I have the high ground. All our favorites. So really the recap hit me in the feels, and that intro scene was not what I was expecting, but it was so cool. And another point of view from what happens when Order 66 is cast out. Like, we've now seen in Clone Wars, we've seen Ahsoka's experience with it. We watched Anakin and Obi-Wan feel that, and we saw Yoda go through it, all those things.
The Bad Batch.
We watched Kanan go through that, or Caleb, I guess.
Yeah, Caleb. Yeah, you're right. Yep.
So to now have just another point of view where it was, I'm assuming, the Jedi Temple still?
It was.
Or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it totally was. I totally got the vibe that it was it was the Jedi Temple. The other thing
Yeah.
that really stood out to me too is just, after this beautiful recap that, it kind of felt like one of those like YouTube highlight reels, where someone like
Fan-made.
stitches together the best. Exactly. Very fan made, but stitches together the best moments and really just summarizes the character through the nuances of the story.
Yeah.
I think that's really great. But I also feel like it's very much telling us who the series is going to be about, and that is
Absolutely.
Obi-Wan and Anakin, obviously. And like you said, they kept even the quirky lines, but I know Kevin had watched it and he said that recap is probably the best recap of the prequels that he's ever seen. He doesn't need to watch
Phenomenal.
the prequels. He's not overly a big fan of the prequels, but you know what I mean? Like he says that highlight reel really does capture the best parts and highlights the importance of what the prequels have done, especially setting up this. But moving into the scene with Order 66 taking place with these teenlings escaping. First, the action that we see is absolutely stunning. Feels very one take, right? Like it's just like the camera doesn't really break. Yeah, like goes in, it comes out, it spins around, and I think it just highlights
that lightsaber work as well was like some of the best live action lightsaber choreography I've ever seen.
Yeah, it really just highlights how Deborah Chow is really going to elevate, I would say, action qualities of Star Wars, because even when I think back to the episodes that she's done of The Mandalorian, the action is always top notch. Like she had some of the best action sequences in her episodes, and I think here this again just showcases it. I am intrigued though with this group of kids. I think that they are going to play a huge importance, and I think we'll talk about that as we get further and we get introduced to some more characters. Let's keep going here. After seeing the events at the Jedi Temple, we jump forward 10 years later to our favorite desert planet with two suns, Tatooine. This is where we are introduced to our new enemy, joined by several lackeys, if you will, the Inquisitors, hunting and killing all remaining Jedi across the galaxy. The Grand Inquisitor, being their leader, is interrogating and kind of perceived as this ultimate antagonist. However, the third sister, Reva, steps in and then kind of takes over this moment. Their interrogation reveals a Jedi hiding among the crowd, played by Benny Safdie, one of the two Safdie brothers who directed Uncut Gems, which I just think is an awesome cameo.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah. After what was a very lackluster confrontation, this nameless Jedi escapes, and Reva makes it clear she is determined to track down Obi-Wan. Fed up with hunting minnows, she wants to catch that big fish. However, the Grand Inquisitor soon puts her in her place, reminding her of the hierarchy that she has adhered to. Now, I know you're a fan of the animated series. I know that you're familiar with the Inquisitors and the Grand Inquisitor. What did you think about this introduction of the Inquisitors?
Yeah, I thought it was really, really cool to finally bring them into a live action show, because as I'm pretty sure it is just in the animated series and the video game that the Inquisitors are a part of. So it's fun to know that they are 100% obviously canon and we can see them in live action. And I know some people with trailers and things were a little iffy about the Grand Inquisitor's makeup and stuff. For me, as somebody from the animation world, the fact that they're able to do it at all, bring an animated character into live action that has inhuman qualities, if it's done and it is recognizable and is clean, then it doesn't really bother me that much. It's like seeing Cad Bane in Boba Fett.
Right.
I was just stoked no matter what. You couldn't have done anything wrong with that, because how do you bring a literal alien into a live action show? And Star Wars has always been, I think, ahead of the game in terms of prosthetics and what's the word I'm looking for? Practical effects. So
practical effects, yes, absolutely. I totally agree, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people online and were just a little bit miffed by the look and feel. Yeah. Rupert Friend, who plays the Grand Inquisitor, went on the record of saying he didn't actually do any research around the character. He wanted to approach it in a fresh way. Okay, that's fine, but I do feel like this scene doesn't really highlight any of the strength or menacing personality of any of the Inquisitors, especially the Grand Inquisitor. I think Reva actually steals the show here, and she shows that she is the villain. She is ruthless. She's cunning. And I know he's very pragmatic. Like the Grand Inquisitor is very pragmatic and has a way of doing things, which is very clear. But in this moment, Reva looks more intimidating than the Grand Inquisitor and then the rest of them. So I was a little intrigued, but it does definitely set the stage of a feud or sort of that hierarchy. What's to come, especially like the feud that they're gonna have as we get further in, and her just being hell-bent on wanting to catch this, as I said, big fish that is Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? So okay, moving into the next part here. After this moment with the Inquisitors, we catch up with Obi-Wan, who's living in solitude, keeping to himself, laying low. He's sleeping in a cave nearby while working low-paying jobs. He's also in contact with the JLAW trader called Tika, who happens to share something he found that belonged to a Jedi, which Obi-Wan just shrugs off and doesn't, want to give any thought to. As his day winds down and we see him fall asleep, this takes us into a nightmare flashback sequence that seems to really capture what's haunting Obi-Wan. And as he wakes up, he's softly asking for Master Qui-Gon Jinn in this empty cave. Okay, so in the recap at the end, we hear Yoda saying to Obi-Wan, as he did in Revenge of the Sith, I'm going to teach you something so you can communicate with your old master. Here we get the second reference to Qui-Gon Jinn. Are we going to see Qui-Gon in this? Are we going to get his voice? So. Like, I am like double fingers crossed. I am like toes crossed. I really hope Liam Neeson comes back, because we did not get enough of him.
Oh my God. I am full, again, animated person coming from the Clone Wars. There's that section of episodes where it may have to remind me on the planet's name, but it's the one with the light and dark, and it's really heavy. I can't remember the name, but we'll
I know. Can I? Yeah,
throw it in there.
Darcy or Nate were here. They're off in Star Wars Celebration.
Screaming at us.
I know.
Anyway, they're on that like very force sensitive planet, and as they're going through like trying to sleep, and they can't find Anakin. Obi-Wan connects with Qui-Gon Jinn, and he's like, this can't be real. I can't be actually connecting with you right now. What's happening? So to know that eventually he will figure out that that's a true thing he can do, and I also think it's such a sad moment for him to be like asking for him and know that he's closed himself off from the Force so much at this point that he can't connect with him anymore, maybe. Like maybe he's been able to in the past, but now he can't because he's so far gone.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the closing off of the Force is something that we'll talk more about, but you get that hint of it here. You get that hint of it even in the scene where he's talking with the Jawa, and he just kind of doesn't want to talk about Jedi. He doesn't want to hear anything about them, right? He's kind of ignoring that part of his life, if you will. I think this again just is a peek behind the curtain of the trauma that Obi-Wan is carrying, and I think again that's going to be very much the center of this story. It felt very reminiscent of what we saw in the Book of Boba Fett, with similar, just how Boba was using, obviously it was taking place in a bacta tank where he was kind of getting these flashbacks of his past and kind of internalizing how he came to be. I think here what we're seeing is there's a lot of weight that he still carries. He sees himself as a failure, letting his friends down, letting down the Jedi, and I think that this little nightmare sequence really just highlights the sort of the weight of what he's carrying with him and why he is the way he is. So let's keep moving on here. Obi-Wan has been keeping an eye on Luke from afar. We saw that obviously in one of the trailers that dropped, and we knew that was Luke. And here we get that scene. We see him sitting on a cliff, and then he goes over to drop off a toy that was what the Jawa Tika gave him. And we actually see that toy apparently in A New Hope. When Luke's playing with it. So again, really interesting. Small thing that they do to connect the dots. On his way back to his cave, Obi-Wan runs into a traveler named Nari, the nameless Jedi that escaped the Inquisitors in the scene earlier, who calls him Obi-Wan rather than Ben, and he says he needs his help. The Inquisitors are hunting him. Obi-Wan encourages him to bury the lightsaber and lay low, and moving on with his life as the time of the Jedi is over, our protagonist says, riding off and urging Nari to just accept things as they are. So this, with the flashback that I mentioned in the last scene, it's very clear, again, Obi-Wan is broken. Is it safe to say?
Absolutely.
Also with this question, do you think Nari is one of those kids that we saw at the opening?
I don't know. If he is, then I bet you we see all of them in some aspect. And I have an inclination as to who one of them may be.
Yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength. When we get there, we'll be able to chew on that. I think what they're building out here is a really interesting character study. Like, I was lucky enough to attend a press conference in advance to seeing these episodes drop, and in the press conference, Deborah Chow went on the record of saying that she feels like this is a character study as similar to that of Logan or the Joker, where it's very much focused on a character and these sort of internal struggles and the layers that kind of build that character. And I think that's very apparent even in just these moments, especially the way he's reacting, and to see Nari fight back and just be like, what happened to you? Like, what happened to you? You were a great Jedi, but we know as viewers the struggles of what Obi-Wan is dealing with. We went through the prequels, and we understand that he didn't just lose his brother, his best friend, or his apprentice. He lost everything. He knows what the stakes are of why he needs to go into hiding. And I think the advice that he's trying to give here is to just lay low and forget that life, or else it's going to get you killed. And I think that's valid advice. valid advice. So the episode rotates in and around, showing us this sort of mundane life of Obi-Wan. And upon finishing another day, a work day for Obi-Wan, as he arrives at his stable, Uncle Owen throws the ship that he had left for Luke at his feet and asks him to stay away from Luke. Obi-Wan reinforces his responsibility to Luke, while Owen makes some emotional digs that brings up Anakin and leaves Obi-Wan to feel a little hollow. As Owen leaves, Reva and the fifth brother are beginning to interrogate a bunch of townfolk. Reva senses Owen is hiding something and threatens to kill his family if no one speaks up on his behalf. This goes on for a while until the fifth brother forces Reva to stand down. And as Reva walks away, she promises Owen she'll get him next time. So again, another moment here that we see Reva like really just kind of overstepping, right? Like she is forceful. What do you think is driving this? Like, I know that we probably, that might be something that could kind of hint at where we're getting at in two, but is this where we want to talk about it, or do we want to wait to talk about what we're thinking?
Well, I feel, at least for me, if we talk about it now, it will, I should say, give her a little redemption in my mind, because I'll be completely honest, I'm not a huge fan of her yet. I don't know what it is, but in the first episode and continuing into the second one, I don't necessarily feel where this anger is coming from, or like why do you want to find Obi-Wan so bad? And it just doesn't read to me. However, if she happens to be one of those kids from that moment, maybe there was some reason that Obi-Wan was meant to protect them and he didn't, and that becomes her driving force. But there's just, I don't know. I've seen both episodes twice now, but there's something missing for me with her performance. I don't know. Yeah, I think why.
I think you're getting exactly what I'm feeling. Like, she is the mystery. She is the mystery more so than anything else. beyond the Inquisitors, beyond, how this whole confrontation between Obi-Wan and Anakin or Darth Vader is going to happen. I think the biggest mystery is, who's Reva and why is this so important to her? And I think clearly here, we see her cut off the hand of just a woman to set an example. And then she was going to kill Owen and his family and promises that she'll be back for him. I just think that, to your point, there's information that we haven't been given yet that is fueling why she is this way. But she kind of seems like she's in control. Like she knows what she's doing to a certain degree, and to the point of, even with the idea of how sort of reckless she is, there's a reason to that. There's a purpose to that. So yeah, I think the mystery around Reva is very interesting, and I, setting her up as potentially being one of the kids that was able to get away from Order 66, I think would be perfect.
So good. I'd also would love to highlight, is it Edgerton? Joel Edgerton's performance in that scene was amazing. I love that he is back from the Revenge of the Sith film, because he accepts Lucas's nephew or whatever. But his performance, not only with Ewan McGregor and Obi-Wan, but also with Reva in that scene, and his like slight looks to the right to look at Obi-Wan to say like, this is your fault, man. Exactly. He did such a good job. It was so cool.
And I love how when Reva, leaves, Obi-Wan comes over and says, "Thanks, Owen," and he says, "I didn't do it for you," right? Because we forget that he did it because of Luke, really, at the end of the day, right? So I think, seeing Joel Edgerton just come back, and hopefully he'll be in more episodes as we go through.
I hope so.
Who knows? But yeah, he's a fantastic actor and a fantastic filmmaker as a director too. So I think, he really does commit, and it does show here that as many years have passed since Revenge of the Sith, he's still willing to come back and commit to this role. So bravo to Mr. Joel Edgerton. Okay, so let's move into the next part here, because this is where things get really, really interesting. We leave Tatooine and head to Alderaan, where we see a young Princess Leia mischievously skipping out on an important political event to play in the woods. In these scenes, we see her affinity for adventure as she makes up little stories of these ships that are flying away. We see her also as a 10-year-old with a strong voice chewing out her cousin. Upon being reprimanded and returning to the woods, she ends up being captured by several goons as they chase her. Now, that's a very quick, condensed version of that scene. There is a lot of nuance to it. But were you surprised by this? Because I was definitely surprised. How did you feel?
Shocked. I had no clue that Leia was going to be this major feature character in this series, though very fun to know that she had a growing relationship with Obi-Wan prior to A New Hope. So there's something there that she already knew who he was and why she could reach out to him for help, which is so cool. That little actor, Vivian Blair, who plays young Leia, is so spunky and so fun and super sassy, which is fantastic, and so reminiscent of Carrie Fisher's performance in the first, or I guess episode 4, 5, 6. So that was so fun to make that connection, and she did such a good job there. She is a child, and there are a lot of chase scenes with her that I feel maybe the editing wasn't as strong when it comes to her chase scenes, because there were moments where those full-blown adults were just like, oh no, she passed through my arms.
Yeah, so, it felt very like Leave It to Beaver style chase scene.
Yeah.
Like you had to
could
really
have done
suspend
some
your
quick
disbelief.
jump cuts and
100%.
it would have looked like she was faster, but anyway, if she's a kid, you can't force her to run fast.
There was only one scene that I really liked in the chase scene where she ducked and slid to avoid, right? And I wish they had used that a little bit more. They used her height and the ability of like being able to be crafty. She knew the woods. She's that's her planet, that's her home. So she knew how to fight. And then, these guys would have actually been knocked out, leaving, this character played by Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. Let's just take a second here. Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers is in the Star Wars universe, which is wild. Kind of took me out when I realized who he was. But, again, there could have been a better way to handle it. And I do think that this is where it kind of took me out. I'm like, what is going on here? The young actress that is playing this young Leia, she captures the subtle nuances of the Leia that we know and love, and she really has ingrained it in her personality. And it's almost funny too, because in the moment when she's chewing out her cousin, you can tell she's using the Force to evaluate and sense what drives her cousin. She just doesn't know it's the Force, right?
Yeah.
But the only way people inherently have been able to read people are Jedis, because they sense it in them, right? They read them, right? So, again, it does show her ability to be very adult, very aware. But I also think it's a subtle nod to the inherent Force abilities that she has that we don't yet know of, or that she doesn't yet know of. So I liked that. I actually really liked it. And I think this is going to be a pretty divisive part of this episode, is bringing young Leia in. Because, you called it out, like, we haven't really gotten to the point of where we know Obi-Wan and so on are going to start interacting. But we inevitably get the hint that Obi-Wan's going to be important, especially given what else is about to happen in this episode, right? We know that Obi-Wan's they're going to have an interaction. And it's funny how this may alter the events, or maybe it doesn't. We'll talk about it when we get to episode 2. But I think it's interesting that it might not necessarily alter it all that much. Okay, this is my last little chunk of this episode. It's a little bit more of reading, so I'm just going to close it out, and then we'll get into our overall thoughts and score. All right, so after this, Leia's adoptive parents, Bail and Bria Organa, reach out to Obi-Wan and plead with him to help them bring her back. They can't get the Senate involved or anyone else involved just because of how sensitive the situation is. So for now, Obi-Wan is their only hope. Obi-Wan refuses, pointing out that 10 years have passed and he's not the same man he once was. He encourages them to find someone else. Later, on his way back from another mundane workday, Obi-Wan sees Nari, the Jedi that he met in the desert, strung up as the town folk look up in sadness. Not taking no for an answer, Bail shows up at Obi-Wan's home and reveals that Leia has been taken to Dayu, we will see in episode 2, and encourages Obi-Wan to get over himself, essentially. They all experience loss, but he needs to let things go. Meanwhile, on the bounty hunter ship, little Leia is resourceful and uses her friend Lola to break her binds, but her captors arrive, destroy the robot, and promise no one is coming for her. It is also revealed here that the whole plan was devised by Reva to draw out Obi-Wan of hiding. But it seems like the words of Bail Organa had worked, because we see Obi-Wan venture out to the middle of the desert, where he digs up his old lightsabers, and he finds himself boarding a ship where we now know he is heading to Dayu to rescue Leia. And the episode ends. Okay, so I covered off a big chunk there. First, let's start with Bail Organa coming to see Obi-Wan. First, Jimmy Smits. Hello, Jimmy Smits. Welcome back to the Star Wars universe. And he's so charming. Even in the moments that we see Bail with Leia, you see such a father-daughter relationship. I really loved it. I think her mother, it's clear that her mother doesn't really get her, but Bail gets her. Do you know what I mean? But Bail really gets her and understands that inherent.
And, I think he gets her because he was so close with Padme. So he can feel and sense that with her. Right. And that's why he has such a closer connection than the mother does. Yeah,
for sure. He gets it, right? There's even that moment when she was looking at the spaceships. Bail's like, oh, what did you see today? Right. And, they have the same sort of sense of humor. They have the same sort of imagination. And I think that's just so great to see him. And here to be this sort of reinforcing force of to Obi-Wan, literally the reinforcing force to him, to tell him to just get over yourself. We all have experienced loss. We're all doing what we can to pick up these pieces. You need to let go. Right. And you're the only other one who knows how important Leia is. Exactly. Exactly. And it's true, right? Which is why they don't want to get the Senate involved. They don't want to hire any bounty hunters, because then they're going to be like, well, what's so important about her? They're going to go to an old friend to see if he can help. And apparently that's the motivation he needs. And I don't know, I think it's really great when he gets to the desert and he's just, he's digging it out. Like as soon as he gets there, I'm like, oh, he's getting his lightsaber. That's what he's doing, right? And when you see it, and he has, it looks like he has both his and Anakin's. Which is nuts, right? So he puts them both. He had them both in the desert. So I love though too that Reva, she's playing a long con game here of chess by using whatever resources she has to get Obi-Wan out in the open so she can capture her. So I like that. As we closed out this episode, that was the reveal as to why Leia was infused in this episode. Because at first I was kind of like, why would she be here? But then we get this moment that really does justify why she was involved into this story. And I'm excited to talk about episode 2 where we can unravel this a bit more. But yeah, that was it for episode 1, part 1 of Obi-Wan. So I think with that, I think it's safe to say we need to give our final impressions on this episode and our final score, which we'll be rating out of 1 to 5 buried lightsabers. Meg, as our guest, why don't you kick things off?
Yeah. Overall, I think it was a great start to a series we've all been waiting for so long. And it really highlighted Obi-Wan in his post-Jedi form. He's distanced himself from the life he knew, and we're about to see him step back into that for the first time in 10 years, and with a lot of pain and baggage. And he truly carries that. And it's really relevant.
Yeah,
that you can tell he truly is just like, I don't want to do this again. It hurt me more than a lot of people, and he's really hesitant to get back into it. But it's really exciting. It's exciting to see old characters. It's exciting to see new characters. I'm intrigued on where they're gonna go, and I think as a first episode, also with the recap at the beginning, I'm going to have to give this one a 4 out of 5 buried lightsabers.
Well, I could not agree with you more, Meg. I really enjoyed this episode. I think it does such a great job at setting up what the series is going to be. It's unapologetically embracing the prequels and using them as a launching pad for this new story, which feels entirely new and fresh. The episode is the strongest when it's focused on Obi-Wan. While I think Reva is cunning and I'm intrigued to learn more about her, I was a little underwhelmed with the Inquisitors, as I was mentioning, and I think that we could have gotten a little bit more from them as being the sort of menacing. They look great, but they were very background rather than the foreground. Introducing young Leia was a choice. I do like it, especially with the subtle implications of seeing the Leia we know and love show up in this younger version. I do think she might be a bit too young. Like I think she they say she's 10, but I feel like she's 8.
I think the actual actor was 7 years old when they filmed this. So
that to me, like it does show. Like it's one thing when you get someone older and you say that they're younger, but when you get someone younger and say that they're older, it's just harder to bridge that unless they look it. That being said, this serves as another example though of embracing the history of Star Wars and making slight changes, because as much as people want to move away from the Skywalker saga, which I can agree with to a certain degree, I would love to see more stories that are not Skywalker saga centric. I also think there's a lot of interest in telling more stories with these characters at different points, like we've gotten already with Luke in Mando season 2 and in the Book of Boba Fett. Here we're seeing just a different perspective. Now, how it ties into the whole what's already canon, that is yet to be seen. While this episode is great at setting things up and introducing some of these characters, it's not perfect. As I mentioned, the introduction of the Grand Inquisitors and the rest of the Inquisitors was a little lackluster. It left me wanting more. I didn't find them menacing or anything scary about them, and Reva really did outshine them in the end. I really do love what they're doing by introducing this young Leia. However, that chase scene in the forest was absolutely horrible and was really, really lame. However, this episode is still a win and a huge success. So I'm going to be giving this episode a 4 out of 5 buried lightsabers. Well, that's it. We've just wrapped up our first episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi for our Watch Club. But before we close things out, Meg, I'd love for you to share with our listeners where they can see more of you and the artwork that you're doing. So where can they find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Megan Clara Draws. You can find me on Twitter at Megan Clara Draws. And now you can also find me streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/Megan Clara Draws, where I also draw live. So you get to see my process. You can see how I create characters and do different crafts. You can also watch me learn. I'm currently learning how to do background art. So, yeah, you can come and hang out with me and chat and say you found me through the Geekcentric podcast.
Yeah, I've checked it out. I've joined a couple streams and honestly, it's tons of fun to see your process and how you do the work that you do. You know that app Procreate so well.
It's taken some time.
You have all the tricks, and I love that you're sharing, what you're learning at the same time on Twitch. I think it's such a great experience. It also encourages other people to join in the learning and to accept that, because we're all figuring it out as we go, right? So
exactly.
I think that's great. And of course, we'll have all the links to your accounts in the show notes below. So definitely go over to Megan Clara's channels. Show her some love. But that is it for this episode of Watch Club for Obi-Wan Kenobi. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts or your own predictions on the shows that we cover in Watch Club, well, you can reach out to us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric. Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other episodes covering the latest and greatest shows and movies out now, including our recent spoiler-free reviews for the Bob's Burger movie and Stranger Things 4. Meg, have you checked out any of Stranger Things 4 yet?
It's too scary for me.
Okay, yeah. Might not be everyone's cup of tea, and this one is definitely scarier, so, spoiler alert anyways. Also, I'm stoked to say that we have our spoiler-free and spoiler-filled reviews for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, as well as our very special interview with director Sam Raimi and writer of In the Multiverse of Madness, Mr. Michael Waldron, who joined us on the podcast for an interview with myself and Kevin. We had a great time with them. We'll keep touting that interview for as long as we can, because it was such a surreal experience. Plus, we have our weekly This Week in Geek episodes where we break down the latest trailers and news every single Wednesday. This past week was a little bit later just because of timing issues. But our next episode of This Week in Geek will be all Star Wars. We are going to be catching up with Nate and Darcy for all things Star Wars Celebration, so you won't want to miss that. So be sure to subscribe, and hey, maybe leave us a 5-star review if you don't mind. We always appreciate the love. Meg, I'll talk to you shortly. We're about to record episode 2, but thank you for joining me for this Watch Club. And as we say, may the Force be with you.
Always.